All right, let's go to 2 Kings chapter 15 first. Many people are wondering why we're actually jumping back and forth between books and chapters and sections and wondering why we're just don't do it just a sequential order, is because we're trying to insert the story where it belongs. What it means is that when the Bible was put together, it was not put together by the chronological or historical order. So sometimes it's very difficult for people to read because the sequence of the book, it is not in order. So it's very difficult to figure out why the story in this book is actually repeated in other places, or maybe somewhere in the either first or the second Kings or the first and second Chronicles, and then the prophets are kind of like overlapping, because if you don't understand what is really happening at the time and then insert what the prophet is saying, it's very difficult to really understand what this message is really about. So we're trying to just reorganize and then trying to insert the prophetic books into wherever it is supposed to be, which means we're going back and forth between the second Kings, and second Chronicles, and prophetic books, and we're putting it all together. That's why I shared our table, which just actually Daisy just pointed out. We're going by that table. So if you're not sure exactly where we're jumping, please just take a look at the table. I will repost it again, to making sure that you follow through it. And even if you read the Bible, you should just read it in the order that I actually just share with you. So today we're going to coming back to the second King, chapter 15 and 16, and then we're going to jump to the book of Micah. So let's read first. In the 27th year of Jeroboam, king of Israel, Azariah the king of Amaziah, king of Judah, began to reign. He was the 16th year old when he began to reign, and he reigned 52 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Jecholiah of Jerusalem, and he did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, according to all that his father Amaziah had done. Nevertheless, the high place were not taken away. The people still sacrificed and made offering on the high places. And the Lord touched the king so that he was leper. Let me read from verse 5 again. And the Lord touched the king so that he was a leper to the day of his death. And he lived in a separate house. And Jotham the king of Asun was over the household, governing the people of the land. Now the rest of the acts of Azariah and all that he did, they are not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah. And Azariah slept with his father, and they buried him with his fathers in the city of David, and Jotham, his son, reigned in his place. So let's just take a look at the tables, so that we kind of have an idea which king we're referring to. So let me just share my screen for a second. All right. So when you look at this, so the left side is the kings of the Judah, and the right side of the kings of Israel, north. So right now we're currently looking at, when you look at the chapter 15, we're actually looking at the when you look at the verse 1, the 27th year of Jeroboam, king of Israel. So when you look at this table, to the green side, which is the right side, you will see this Jeroboam II, right? So between somewhere 782 to 753, this is the time we're talking about. So Jeroboam II, which is in the north of Israel. And Azariah the son of Amaziah, king of Judah. So when you go to the left side, you'll see the Amaziah here. So which is a very similar time, right? So he was the sons of Ahaziah, and he's also named it as Joash. It's the same king, it's just a different name. But here in the Second Kings, we actually reference it as Azariah, which is over here. So we're talking about Amaziah. So around the same time when Jeroboam II was ruling, Amaziah was actually ruling the south of Judah. But because he did something he shouldn't be doing, he became a leper. So let's find out how he became a leper. So let's take a look at Second Chronicle. Second Chronicle, chapter 26. Second Chronicle, chapter 26. It's the same story, but it's a lot more details than what we just read. So we're going to read Second Chronicle, chapter 26. And all the people of Judah took Uzziah, who was 16 years old, and made him king instead of his father Amaziah. He built Eloth and restored it to Judah. After the king slept with his fathers, Uzziah was 16 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 52 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Jecholiah of Jerusalem, and he did what was right in the eyes of the Lord according to all that his father Amaziah had done. He set himself to seek God in the days of Zechariah, who instructed him in the fear of God, and as long as he sought the Lord, God made him prosper. He went out and made war against the Philistines and broke through the wall of Geth and the wall of Jabneh and the wall of Ashdod. And he built the cities in the territory of Ashdod and elsewhere among the Philistines. God helped them against the Philistines and against the Arabians who lived in Gur-Baal, and against Meonite. The Ammonites paid tribute to Uzziah, and his fame spread even to the border of Egypt, for they became very strong. Moreover, Uzziah built towers in Jerusalem at the corner gate and at the valley gate and at the angle, and fortified them. And he built towers in the wilderness, and cut out many cisterns, for he had a large herd both in the Shephelah and in the plain. And he had farmers and vine dressers in the hills and in the fertile land for the loved and soil. Moreover, Uzziah had an army of soldiers fit for war, in divisions according to the numbers in the muster made by Jael, the secretary of Maaseiah, the officer under the directions of Hananiah, one of the king's commanders. The whole number of the heads of fathers, house of mighty men of valor, was 2,600. Under their command was an army of 307,500 who could make war with mighty power to help the king against the enemy. And Uzziah prepared for all the army shields, spears, helmets, coat of mail, bows, and stones for slings. In Jerusalem he made machines invented by a skillful man to be on the towers and a corner to shoot arrows and great stones, and his fame spread afar for he was marvelous help till he was strong. But when he was strong, he grew proud to his destructions, for he was unfaithful to the Lord his God, and it entered the temple of the Lord to burn incense on the altar of incense. But Azariah the priest went in after him, and 80 priests of the Lord, who were men of valor, and they withstood King Uzziah, and said to him, It is not for you, Uzziah, to burn incense to the Lord, but for the priests, the son of Aaron, who are consecrated to burn incense. Go out of the sanctuary, for you have done wrong, and it will bring you to no honor from the Lord God. Then Uzziah was angry. Now he had a censer in his head to burn incense. And when he became angry with the priest, leprosy broke out on his forehead in the presence of the priest in the house of the Lord by the altar of incense. And Azariah, the chief priest, and all the priests looked at him, and behold, he was leprous in his forehead, and they rushed him out quickly, and he himself hurried to go out, because the Lord had struck him. And King Uzziah was leper to the days of death, and being a leper, lived in a separate house, for he was excluded from the house of the Lord. And Jotham, his son, was over the king's household, governing the people of the land. Now the rest of the acts of Uzziah, from the first to last, Isaiah the prophet, the son of Amos, wrote. And Uzziah slept with his father, and they buried him with his fathers in the burial field that belongs to the kings. For they said, He is a leper, and Jotham, his son, reigned in his place. So this Chronicle, chapter 26, gives a lot more depth and insight of exactly what happened to Uzziah, why he became a leper. So when you read the 2 Kings, you always have to reference 2 Chronicle and reference back and forth, because one side it does not talk about the other, but it actually, when you read them both together, then you will get the full picture of what is really happening. Remember, 2 King describes all the story of the north of the kings, as well as the kings of the south as well. Whereas 2nd and 1st and 2nd Chronicle mostly talks about the kings of the Judah. It does not really talk about the kings of the south. So you won't find many stories about the kings in the south, kings of the north in 1st and 2nd Chronicle. You will find some, but mostly you won't find. Most of the king story is in the north is in the 2nd Kings. So when you actually read the story of the south of the Judah, you always have to reference the 2nd Chronicles to get the full picture. So now you understand what is actually happened to Azariah. So as I mentioned, sometimes people wonder, it's like, oh, why does it says Azariah and the other places called Uzziah? It's the same king, but it's very simple. In the old days, they used to have different names. They called to be different names. If you remember, do you remember Solomon had a different name? Do you remember what that name was? Anyone? So let's go to 2 Samuel. Actually, not the 2nd Samuel. 2 Samuel chapter 12. 2 Samuel chapter 12. We're going to read from verse 24 and 25. Then David comforted his wife Bathsheba, and went in to her and lay with her. And she bore a son, and he called his name Solomon. And the Lord loved him, and sent a message by Nathan the prophet. So called his name Jedidah, because of the Lord. So Solomon has a two name. One is a Solomon, which we know very well. And Solomon also has a different name, which God gave them, which is Jedidah. Jedidah was a different name, but it's referring the same person. It's a Solomon's name. So Uzziah and Azariah is a similar story. They have a different name, and they reference it as like different. They kind of like use two names exchangeably. So when you read one side of the book, you may actually see the king's name as Azariah, whereas if you actually look at the book of Chronicle, you will read Azariah as referred as Uzziah, but it's the same person. So coming back to the second Chronicle, when Uzziah became a king, initially he was actually following the instructions of Zechariah. Zechariah, unfortunately, it does not really say who Zechariah is, but the Zechariah who was living in the time of Uzziah, he was a faithful person, and he was a son of a man, and he actually instructed Uzziah how to follow the Lord. When the Zechariah was actually instructed him and guided him to follow the Lord, he did. So, when he was young and when he became a king, he was the follower of the Lord, and he just followed the instructions that it was given by the Zechariah. And when he did that, God helped him. So when you look at the verse 7, God helped him against the Philistines and against the Arabians who lived in Gurbaal and against Met-Unite. So which means God helped them because he was following the God's law and statute. That's the key word. When the kings were following the instructions that God is giving to the kings, they were blessed, and God was always helped them, and they were able to win the battles. But when they started to giving up following the Lord and they just do it the way they want, that's where the problem starts. So when you're coming down verse 16, but when he was strong, he grew proud to his destruction. This is the key word. This is the problem of most of the people. Even though at the beginning people followed the Lord at the beginning, and they needed help, so they come to the Lord and they ask for help. But when they became proud, when they actually get what they want, and they became rich and they became powerful, that's when people start to fail, because they think that they actually got what they have with their own power. Oh, I worked hard on this. Actually, I was smart because I was able to do this and I was able to do that, and I was able to gain these powers and monies and wealth and all these because I'm a person who is capable of doing this. No. This is one of the things that God is constantly reminding us. It is not because we're strong, not because we're capable, not because we're able, because God is helping us to do what we need and what we can. This is something we're going to cover later on, but we have to realize what situation we're in. No matter what you have to realize it is not your power, but it is the power of the Lord that I can do what I can. So when Uzziah, when he actually went out to the battlefield and he was actually getting the victory of the battles, and he thought with all the strong armies and all this armors and he had and all this good stuff that he was actually just going out to a battlefield, and he was to continue to expanding the territories and whatnot, and he thought then he was strong. He thought he was actually, he was powerful, that he was able to do this, but he's not. So became proud. What he wanted to do is he went to the temple side and he wanted to give incense by himself. So what he wanted to do was not only he was a king, but I want to take over the responsibility of the priest as well. So I want to become a king and I want to become a priest. I am going to give the incense to the Lord. Remember, nothing wrong to give incense to the Lord. Nothing wrong. God instructed Moses to give incense at the altar of incense. Nothing wrong to give incense, but who gives the incense is the question. God only gave the authority to priest could go in and give that incense. Not anyone. Not even Levite can go in. It has to be the priest. And not only just any priest, the priest has to be consecrated. And they have to give the sin offering before they go in. Otherwise, they get killed. But what Uzziah wanted to do was, get out of my way. I am the king. I will do and I will give offering to the Lord. This is important things. Even though this is what God gave as a law to give incense offer, if you don't follow it the way that God has instructed us to give, whatever you give to the Lord, first of all, it is not accepted. And second of all, it is not worthy. You have to remember, oh, I gave the service to the Lord. Oh, I attended the worship service. Oh, I actually gave the offer to the Lord. Doesn't mean anything. The giving an offering, giving a praise, giving a prayer, giving a worship, this is all good. These are all good stuff. But if you don't do it the way that God instructed us to do it, this become a problem. Like, for example, I'll just kind of reference it as, as an example. It could be some extreme example, but let's just, give it an example anyway. Let's say there is a family and there's a mother. The mother don't have enough to pay for the rent. Okay, maybe she got laid off, or she lost her job, whatever it may be, and the mother cannot really pay the rent they're living, and there's 5 children in their house. Okay, mother is struggling trying to find the money to pay the rent so that she can actually have a place for herself and as well as her children. So let's say there's the first son, saw her mother is actually suffering. So what he decided to do is, I need to get some money from somewhere. So he goes out and he robs someone else's money and then brings that money and gave it to the mother. And she found out this is the money. He robbed it from someone. He just beat someone out, or he just broke it into someone else's house and then stored the money and then brought that money to her mother. And she found out that was not the honest money. What would just mother do with this money? If a normal situation. Oh, thank you. Oh, this is good. That I'm just going to take this money, I'm just going to pay my rent? Well, some mother would do. But what would normal mother do? Would the mother be happy that your son, robbed the money from someone and gave that money to you to pay off the rent? And you be proud of your son? You got the money. You got what you need. But you're not pleased. This is not the right way to get money. This is not honest money. That's not how you want to raise your kid or your children, to rob someone else's money to fulfill your needs. What if that person needed it for something else? You don't really care about someone else? Same situation. We want the money, but at the same time, how you get money. If this is honestly, he went out and actually worked hard and earned money, I'm sure the mother would be happy to accept that money. But if it's robbing someone else's money, that's not how you should be getting money from. God is the same way. God is instructing His people to follow certain rules and regulations and law. This is God told them, this is how you should work. This is how you should do. But if they don't follow that instructions, and then they just, I don't care what you said, I'm just going to do it my way to get you what you need. I'm just going to get you incense. You ask for incense, I'll give you incense. Who cares about who gives the incense? No. That's not right. This is where most of us are failing. This is something I kept mentioning. People think when I actually give a worship service, and when I give my service, and when I give my time, when I give money to the Lord, God would be happy. Is it really? Not really. That's not what Bible said. There are so many cases, which possibly we're going to be able to actually see today, if it can get to that place. Micah confessed that this is not what God is happy with. Let's take a look at some of the sections that we were going to cover in Micah. So let's go to Micah for a second. Let's go to Micah chapter 6. Well, we're going to cover this one later on when we get to Micah, but we'll go to Micah chapter 6. We're going to read from verse 6. Micah chapter 6, verse 6. With what shall I come before the Lord, and bow myself before God on high? Shall I come before him with burnt offering, with calf of year old? Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams, with 10,000 of rivers of oil? Shall I give my firstborn for my transgressions, the first of the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? He has told you, O man, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you, but to do justice, and to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God. Verse 8, the tail end of the verse 8 is what God wants. Not the ram, not the oil, not the incense. It doesn't matter what you bring. But if you don't do it the way God has instructed you to have justice and have a kindness and have a humble heart before the Lord and walking with the Lord, no matter what you give, is not counted. Is not God accept nor pleased with. You think I gave the offering and you gave the service to the Lord and you gave the worship and you gave the praise to the Lord and God would be happy? Think twice. Before we actually gave something, we have to think, will God accept my offering? Will God accept my service? Will God accept my worship? Will God accept my heart? That's what needs to be counted first before we actually do anything. Just like what I just gave you an example. Is that the money that your mother wants? Or the mother wants not only actually educate her son, and also wants the money for her needs. Of course, this example is not really, the good example for God, because God does not need our money. Right? God is not asking for our money or anything. But what God wants from us is from our heart. What am I giving to the Lord? This goes back to the same example that I kept referencing in the book of Genesis. When Cain was building an altar, where Abel was also building an altar, right? They both gave the offering to the Lord. And God only accepted Abel's offering, not the Cain. And Cain was upset. Why? I'm giving the same thing as what, Abel is giving. How come you're only receiving Abel's offering, not mine? He was very upset. God warned him. Why are you upset? He warned him to look inside. What is really triggering him? What is really troubling him? For Cain's perspective, just the burning the crops wasn't good enough for him. I am giving you something, you should just take it, shut up and just take it. I'm just giving it to you. You just look at what I'm doing, just take it as is. What else do you want from me? There's no heart for him. There's no faith in him. Whereas Abel was giving the animal offering, but before he gave it, he first of all trusted, he had a faith that God accept, and second, he believed in him. That was the difference between Cain and Abel. They both gave the offering, but God only accepted Abel's offering, not the Cain. This story applies to the same things to our life as well. When we give anything to the Lord, are we following? Are we actually looking at the things that God is really looking for, or I just give it because I just think this is, just giving it is enough, and this is what you asked for? I just going to burn the animal. I've done my work. This is my due, and I'm okay with it. I gave it, so what else do you want from me? What we really want to understand from the Bible, and what Bibles keep telling us and teaching us, is that it is not the burning animal. It is not about burning incense. It's not about going into the the temple and sprinkle the blood of the animal. That's not what I'm asking for. What I'm really asking for is you realize you are the sinner, that you want to come to me with the contrite heart, with painful heart, repenting heart, that you come to me. That this animal is died for you. The blood that you're sprinkling in the temple is your blood, because that's what you're supposed to give it. But people keep forgetting. Just the ritual became the most important part than the heart itself. So, Uzziah was just thinking, I am the king, I have all the authority and the power in this country. Priest, you get out of my way. I go into the temple side. I am going to give the incense offer to the Lord because I'm the king. I don't need you to do it for me. I can do it myself. But that's not the instructions that God gave it to the king. King has a certain responsibilities. Priest has a different responsibility. God gave a different responsibility and duties to each role. But King Uzziah, because he became proud, he ignored it and he just do it the way he wanted. That was the failure on his part. Therefore, he brought the leprosy on himself. It is not God actually just to throw at him, because he brought that disaster upon himself. And this is many of the misconceptions that people have, especially in the Old Testament, that God is always punishing people. God is always mad. God is always, bringing all kinds of disaster upon the land of Israel. No, that's not true. What people don't see is what they're doing wrong, what the Israelites are doing wrong, what the Judean is doing wrong, and they're not even considering it. But when you look at it very carefully, Israel and Judeans are the one who's actually causing all this disaster. And think about it, if your child had done something wrong, right, and then you want to discipline him, right? You want to discipline it, and then someone else looks at it and says, why are you disciplining your son? But they don't look at what my son had done wrong. They're only blaming you that you're disciplining your son. Then you're not seeing the full picture. You're disciplining your son because your son had done something wrong and you want to correct them. You want to educate your son. This is what God is doing. Not just, I feel bad, or I just, I don't feel good, I'm just going to slap someone. That's not what God is doing at all. All right, coming back to Second King. So now you understand why Azariah, or the Uzziah, became a leper. Coming back to 2 King chapter 15, verse 8. In the 38th year of Azariah, king of Judah, Zechariah the son of Jeroboam reigned over Israel in Samaria 6 months. And he did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, as his father had done. He did not depart from the sins of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, which he made Israel to sin. Shallum the son of Jabesh conspired against him and struck him down at Ebelim and put him to death and reigned in his place. Now the rest of the deeds of Zechariah, behold, they are written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel. This was the promise of the Lord that he gave to Jehu. Your son shall sit on the throne of Israel to the 4th generation, and so it came to pass. So let's take a look at the chart here again. So, when you look at this chart on the green, which is on the right side, remember, Joram, which is the sons of Ahab, right? God wanted to punish the house of Ahab. So he actually appointed Jehu to struck the house of Ahab. And the prophet gave him instructions, and he also gave him reason why God is actually striking down Ahab's family. He heard what the reason was. And then when Jehu struck the house of Ahab, and when he became a king, he did exactly what Ahab was doing. The only thing that he did right was when he was actually rebel against the Joram, he actually killed all the prophets of Baal. That was the only thing that he did right. But after that, when he became a king, literally, he was following same behavior that Ahab's house was doing. So God said, you only going to last for 4 generations, which means Jehu, Jehoahaz, Jehoash, and Jeroboam the seconds, and Zechariah. So 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, down after Jehu, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then Shallum actually killed his son Zechariah. He only ruled for how long? Only 6 months. That was it. And as God said, you only going to last for the 4th generation after you, and after the 4th generation, his house of Jehu was complete and done. This is one thing you have to keep in mind. Some people ask me, how do you believe it will happen the way the Bible said it will happen? It's very simple. The Bible is made out of a promise. This is why we call it Old Testament and New Testament. Testament means promise. Old promise, new promise. When God makes the promise, that promise has to be kept. If he says he's going to do it, it has to be fulfilled. And throughout the generations and thousands of years, God made us so many promises. This is what will happen. And then that promise or the prophet's message has been fulfilled one after another. And over time, over a span of thousands of years, that has been fulfilled. This is how I know even the things that didn't happen and the things will happen in the future that is written in the Bible, I know that will happen based on thousands of fulfillment of the promises. That's how I come to believe. I believe the promise that will happen in the future, will be fulfilled based on the thousands of history that you have shown me in the Bible. And we have confirmed, and we have seen this. And even in our time, this is how we know it will be fulfilled. And as he said to Jehu, you're only going to last for 4 more generations after you, and that's it. Obviously, this is fulfilled as he promised. Coming back, verse 13, Shallum the son of Jabesh began to reign in the 39 years of Uzziah the king of Judah, and he reigned 1 month in Samaria. How long has been actually ruling the north of Israel? 1 month. So, the king that he killed, right, Zechariah, how long he ruled the north Israel? 6 months. So 6 months, 1 month, very short time they ruled. What you will see here is there's so many rebellions. They're killing each other to take over the powers. This is who we are. Then Menahem, the son of Gadi, came up from Tirzah and came to Samaria, and he struck down Shallum, the son of Jabesh, in Samaria, and put him to death and reigned in his place. Now the rest of the deeds of Shallum and the conspiracy that he made, behold, they are written in the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Israel. At that time, Menahem sacked the Tipshah and all who were in it and its territory from Tirzah on, because they did not open it to him. Therefore he sacked it, and he ripped open all the women in it who were pregnant. What did he do? What did he do? He literally ripped the pregnant woman and pulled the babies out and slapped on the stone. Of course, it's unhuman things they had done. Verse 17. In the 39th years of Azariah, king of Judah, Menahem, the son of Gadi, began to reign over Israel, and he reigned 10 years in Samaria. And he did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. He did not depart all his days from all the sins of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, which he made Israel to sin. Pul, the king of Assyria, came against the land, and Menahem gave Pul 1,000 talents of silver, that he might help him to confirm his hold on the royal power. Menahem exacted the money from Israel, that is, from all the wealth man, 50 shekels of silver from every man, to give to the king of Assyria. So the king of Assyria turned back and did not stay there in the land. Now the rest of the deed of Menahem and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicle of the Kings of Israel? And Menahem slept with his fathers, and Pekahiah his son reigned in his place. So when Assyria came down, what does Menahem do? He just gave lots of money. He pretty much pulled the money out of his own people and gave that money to the Assyrian king, Pul. And then he was hoping that the money will help him. Once again, what is he relying on? What is he really trusting that it's going to protect him and guard him? Is that God or is that money? It's a money. Well, did it work? Well, it did work. He paid the money to Pul, the king of Assyria, and he did not stay, and he moved away, right? The money did, push him away. But was that a real protection? Or was it some sort of like temporary patch? What was he really trusting? He was trusting the money. So what did he believe? Is the power of the money is what he believed. Let's take it back here. Is that any different from us? Don't we also believe the power of money? That the power of money can do a lot of stuff? We may say, well, we don't, but we do. We believe in the power of money. We believe it or not, we act like that. The money can do something for us. Yes, of course, money can do something for us. Money worth of something. You can do a lot of stuff with money. But you know what? It could give you a temporary patch or the solutions that you need. But you won't get the permanent solution. If you abandon God and if you trusted in the Lord, trusted in the money or something else, you will see whatever you believed will fail. And this is one of the lessons that God has to keep teaching us. And this is actually one of the topics that we actually talked about it last week. Why God is actually teaching same thing and over again. Why doesn't he stop? He just said it enough. He showed it to us enough. We should learn. Maybe he should stop talking to us. Maybe he should stop showing us. We should learn hard way. But that's not how it works when you have a child. You say one day, you know what? I'm done. I'm through. You know what? I'm not going to deal with you. I'm not going to say anything. You have to learn it hard way. You just do it your own way. I'm going to see you fail and you're going to just struggles and you're going to learn, good lesson out of this. You know what? Week later, and come back and say, are you doing okay? That's what mothers do. That's what parents do. They can't let them fail. It's not easy. They just keep coming back and it just keep, peeking their nose and say, are you doing okay? This is the heart of the parents. They're not giving up. Even though they feel like to just let them fail and learn the hard way. Sometimes we do. But most of the time, it's very difficult to let them fail. God is keep warning them. I'm showing you the examples. This is what people do. This is who you are. God has to keep showing us who we are. We may actually see, this is the king of Israel, the king of North. And, he did what he did. And I mean, some of the silly stuff that he did. I would not have done this. Really? Maybe not. But maybe yes. We have to realize they are no different than us. We're not better than them when we look at them. We have to reflect ourselves. This is the kind of things that we have in our heart. Continue on, verse 23. In the 5th year of Azariah king of Judah, Pekahiah, the son of Menahem, began to reign over Israel in Samaria, and he reigned 2 years, and he did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. You realize that this word is keep coming up. Every time when the king of Israel showed up, this is one of the passages that follows all the time. He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. He did not turn away from the sins of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, which he made Israel to sin. And Pekah the son of Remaliah, his captain, conspired against him with 50 men of the people of Gilead and struck them. down to Samaria, in the citadel, the king's house, with Argob and Arya, he put him to death and reigned in his place. Now that the rest of the deeds of Pekahiah and all that he did, behold, they are written in the books of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel. What are you seeing here? The story that we're just keep reading, what do you see here? They're killing each other to get the power, right? Rebellion after rebellions, right? They just keep assassinating kings to get the power they want. It's a greed. That's what people want. They would not stop because they want to fulfill their desire to get that power. Verse 27. In the 52nd year of Azariah king of Judah, Pekah the son of Remaliah began to reign over Israel in Samaria, and he reigned 20 years, and he did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. He did not depart from the sins of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, which he made Israel to sin. You see this? This is like keep repeating. Same thing over and over and over. Even though he just keep reminding us this is who we are, and we still do it anyway. In the days of Pekah, king of Israel, Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, came and captured Ijon, Abel Beth Makkah, Janoah, Kadesh Hazor, Gilead, and Galilee, all the land of Naphtali, and he carried a people captive to Assyria. Then Hoshea, the son of Elah, made a conspiracy against the Pekah, the son of Remaliah, and struck him down and put him to death, and reigned in his place in the 20th year of Jotham, the son of Uzziah. Now the rest of the acts of Pekah and all that he did, behold, they are written in the books of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel. Almost every king's been struck down, an assassin, right? Because each one wants to just take the power. Of course, Hoshea, remember? Who is the last king's names of north of Israel? Who is the last king of Israel? Hosea. Who is the last prophet of Israel? Hosea, right? I told you that it's the same name. Both kings and the prophet's name is exactly the same thing. So this is the last king of Israel, and he also assassinated the Pekah to become a king. Verse 32, in the second year of Pekah, the son of Remaliah, king of Israel, Jotham, the son of Uzziah, the king of Judah, began to reign. He was 25 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 16 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Jerusha, and daughters of Zadok. And he did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, according to all that his father Uzziah had done. You see the difference? Do you see the difference here? The word is different. What is the difference between the north of the kings and south of Judah? Usually, when the north of a king name comes, then this is what it comes. He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, is what it comes. And what did it come here with this Jotham? He did what was right in the eyes of the Lord. It was two different words. right? What was evil, what was right or pleased, right? At least in the south of Judah. This is one of the reasons why the south of Judah, the kingdom, was, lasted 150 years, approximately about 150 more years and lasted. Because at least they did something good at the beginning. Although they actually failed at the end, they did something good at the beginning. Uzziah did the same thing. At the beginning, he did the right thing at the beginning. He failed at the end. Verse 35, nevertheless, the high places were not removed. The people still sacrificed and made offering on the high places. He built the upper gate of the house of the Lord. Now the rest of the acts of Jotham and all that he did are they not written in the books of the Chronicle of the kings of Judah? In those days the Lord began to send Rezin the king of Syria and Pekah the son of Remaliah against Judah. Jotham slept with his father and was buried with his fathers in the city of David his father, and Ahaz as his son reigned in his place. So let's go to 2 Chronicle chapter 27. 2 Chronicle chapter 27. It's the same story. We're going to read from verse 1 from chapter 27, 2 Chronicle. Jotham was 25 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 16 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Jerusha, the daughters of Jadok. And he did what was right in the eyes of the Lord according to all that his father Uzziah had done, except he did not enter the temple of the Lord. Remember his father? He actually went into the temple side and he was trying to give the incense to the Lord, and that's how it became actually the leprosy. And now he learned a lesson, right? So he said, I'm not going in there, right? He learned a hard lesson. He saw what father did and how he actually, died. But the people still follow the corrupt practices. He built the upper gate of the house of the Lord and did much building on the wall of Ophel. Moreover, he built cities in the hill country of the Judah, and fort and towers on the wooded hills. He fought with the kings of Ammonite and prevailed against them. And the Ammonites gave him that year 100 talents of silver and 10,000 cores of wheat and 10,000 of barley. The Ammonite paid him the same amount in the second and the third year. So Jotham became mighty because he ordered his way before the Lord his God. Now the rest of the acts of Jotham and all his war and his ways, behold, they are written in the books of the kings of Israel and Judah. He was 25 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 16 years in Jerusalem. And Jotham slept with his father, and they buried him in the city of David. And Ahaz, his son, reigned in his place. So, was Jotham truly faithful 100% to the Lord? Was he? He was not. Partially he was. At least he tried to follow the God's instruction, but he did not destroy the high places, and he let the other people to actually practice other bad things in his time as well. But he was not totally abandoned the Lord, or he was not he was not really just giving up all these bad things. But at least his heart was there to really follow the Lord. That's why there's one word in verse 6. So Jotham became mighty because he ordered his ways before the Lord his God. This is the key word of his life. Even though he was not 100% faithful, but at least he had a heart to follow the Lord. That's why God helped him and grew mightier. And he sort of followed his father's path because Uzziah was at the beginning, he was a faithful until he became proud later on, and then he failed to really serve the Lord the proper way. All right, let's come back to 2 Kings chapter 16. In the 17th year of Pekah, the son of Remaliah, Ahaz, the son of Jotham, the king of Judah, began to reign. Ahaz was 20 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 16 years in Jerusalem. And he did not do what was right in the eyes of the Lord his God, and his father David had done. Now, this is different, right? Ahaz is acted a little bit differently than his father, Jotham. So Ahaz, one of the problem king. So we're going to continue to read on and exactly what he did. But he walked in the ways of the kings of Israel, which means Ahaz or Jeroboam II. He even burned his son as an offering according to the despicable practice of the nations whom the Lord drove out before the people of Israel. And the sacrifice made offering on the high place and on the hills and under every green tree. Now, where did this come from? Well, at least Jotham was actually, he was not a bad king, right? He was not a bad king. He at least tried to follow, even though he did not destroy the high places, and he did not stop people doing, things, some silly stuff. But he was a reasonably okay guy. So let me ask you this: if you rate yourself, how faithful you are, all right, how much you're really, truthful to the Lord. You don't have to answer this. You can just rate yourself. If you rate from 1 through 10, where would you rate yourself? Either be like, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 10, whatever it may be. You can rate yourself, based on your own behavior. Because I don't know you, but you know yourself. And no one can rate you because no one knows you. But at least you'll be able to rate yourself. Whether it's a low or mid or the high, doesn't really matter what it is. But how many of us can say, 10? I could never say 10. Never. Most of the time, yeah, if I can barely make it, maybe 5, maybe 6, pushing like 7, but I fall back to like 4. I'm somewhere in between. I'm no different than Jotham. Literally. I mean, pretty much all of us are like in that range. We try to be faithful to the Lord. We have a heart for that. Jotham had the same heart. He wanted to follow, but he just kept failing. Ahaz, beat his father. Get out of my way, father. I'll take the lead. And then he pretty much completely just abandoned the Lord, and he just went the other way. Well, how can, king like Ahaz come from king of like Jotham, at least who had a heart to follow the Lord? Is that because Jotham was not teaching or educating his son right to follow the Lord? Or maybe he didn't pray enough for his sons? What do you think? We look at many things. Well, if the father is, or their grandfather is the pastor, right? The sons and the grandsons of their pastor must be very faithful, right? Well, typically we look around, we look at the pastor's kid, PK, and they're so faithful and they're like so devoted to the Lord, right? All the examples that we have seen, right? What do you think? As Tony pointed out, faith is not something you can give it to your children. Unfortunately. Each individual have to choose to believe in. No matter what you actually do, like, you're going to have to read the Bibles, you're going to have to attend this Bible study, you have to go to this service, you have to go to this program, this VBS, that VBS, this camp, that camp. Well, of course, it will help at some point. We're hoping that, something will click. Just by doing that, we cannot really give faith to our children. Of course, we will do whatever we can to support him. But unfortunately, it is everyone's choice to believe in. Although they have seen what their parents have seen, have done, that's not always the path that your children will follow. So a person like this Ahaz, the king, even though he has his father, Jotham, and he saw what he did, but he just turned completely away from his father's way. And he just totally abandoned the Lord, and he actually literally gave his son as offering. All right, coming back to verse 16, verse 5. Then Rezin, the king of Assyria, and Pekah, the son of Remaliah, king of Israel, came up to wage war on Jerusalem, and they besieged Ahaz, but could not conquer him. At the time, Rezin, the king of Assyria, recovered Elath for Assyria, and drove the men of Judah from Elath. And Ammoni came to Elath, where they dwell to this day. So Ahaz sent messenger to Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, saying, I am your servant and your son. Come up and rescue me from the heart of the king of Assyria, from the hand of the king of Israel, who are attacking me. Ahaz also took the silver and gold that was found in the house of the Lord and in the treasure of the king's house, and sent a present to the king of Assyria. And the king of Assyria listened to him. The king of Assyria marched up against Damascus and took it, and carrying its people captive to Kir, and he killed the Rezin. When King Ahaz went to Damascus to meet Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, he saw the altar that was at Damascus, and King Ahaz sent Uriah, the priest of model of the altar, and its patterns exact in all its details. And Uriah the priest built the altars in accordance with all that King Ahaz had sent from Damascus. So Uriah the priest made it before the king Ahaz arrived from Damascus. And when the king came from Damascus, the king viewed the altar, and the king drew near to the altar and went upon it, and burned his burnt offering and his grain offering, and poured his drink offering, and threw the blood of his peace offering on the altars. And the bronze altar that was before the Lord he removed from the front of the house, and the place between his altar and his and the house of the Lord, and put it on the north side of the altar. And the king Ahaz commanded Uriah the priest, saying, On the great altar burn the morning burnt offerings and the evening grain offerings, and the king burnt offering and his grain offering with the burnt offering of all the people of the land, and their grain offering and their drink offerings, and throw on it all the blood of the burnt offering and all the blood of the sacrifice. But the bronze altar shall be for me to inquire by. Uriah the king, the priest, did all this as the king Ahaz commanded. And King Ahaz cut off the frames of the stands and removed the basin from them. And he took down the sea from off the bronze oxen that were under it, and put it on the stone pedestal, and the coverway for the Sabbath that had been built inside the house, and outer entrance for the kings. He caused to go around the house of the Lord because of the king of Assyria. Now the rest of the acts of Ahaz that he did, are they not written in the books of Chronicle of the kings of Judah? And Ahaz slept with his father and was buried with his father in the days of David, and Hezekiah his son reigned in his place. So, is Ahaz a good king? Is not a good king. Is not a good king. So let's take a look at a little more details than what we actually read, but it's a very similar. Let's go to 2 Chronicle chapter 28. 2 Chronicle chapter 28. Ahaz was 20 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 16 years in Jerusalem, and he did not do what was right in the eyes of the Lord, which is the same as what the kings of the north Israel. But he walked in the ways of the kings of Israel. He even made the metal image for the Baal, and he made offering in the valley of the son of Hinnom, and burned his sons as an offering, according to the abomination of the nations whom the Lord drove out before the people of Israel. And he sacrificed and made offering on the high places, and on the hills, and under every green tree. Therefore the Lord his God gave him into the hand of the king of Syria. He defeated him and took captive a great number of his people and brought them to Damascus. He was also given into the hand of the king of Israel, who struck them with great force. For Pekah, the son of Remaliah, killed 120,000 from Judah in one day, all of them men of valor, because they had forsaken the Lord, the God of their fathers. So did God actually give the clear reason why actually he brought the Syrians and the king of north of Israel, Pekah? Because God wanted to actually warn him and also discipline him so that he learned. So when he put into hard situations, he learned so that he can come to the Lord. And Zikri, a mighty man of Ephraim, killed Manasseh the king, the son of Azrikam, the commander of the palace, and Elkanah, the next in authority to the king. The men of Israel took captive 200,000 of their relatives, women, sons, and daughters. They also took much spoil from them and brought the spoils of Samaria. But a prophet of the Lord was there, whose name was Obed, and he went out to meet the army that came to Samaria, and said to him, Behold, because the Lord, the God of your father, was angry with Judah, he gave them into your hand, but you have killed them in the rage that has reached up to heaven. And now you you intended to subjugate the people of Judah and Jerusalem, male and female, as your slave. Have you not sinned of your own against the Lord your God? Now hear me, and send back the captive from your relative whom you have taken, for the fierce wrath of the Lord is upon you. Certain chief also of the man of Ephraim, Azariah, the son of Johanan, Berechiah, the son of Meshillemoth, Jehizkiah, the son of Shalhum, and Amasa, the son of Halai, stood up against those who were coming from the war, and said to them, You shall not bring the captive in here, for you proposed to bring upon us the guilt against the Lord in addition to our present sin and guilt. For our guilt is already great, and there is a fierce wrath against Israel. So the armed man left the captive and the spoil before the princes and all the assemblies, and the men who have been mentioned by names arose and took the captives, and with the spoils they clothed all who were naked among them. They clothed them, gave them sandals, provided them with food and drink, and anointed them, and carrying all the feeble among them on donkeys, they brought them to their kinsfolk at Jericho, the city of palm trees. Then they returned to Samaria. At that time, King Ahaz sent to the king of Assyria for help, for Edomite had again invaded and defeated Judah and carried away the captives, and the Philistine had made a raid on the cities in the Shephelah and the Negev of Judah, and had taken Bet Shemesh, Ajalon, Gederoth, Soko with its village, Timnah with its village, and Gimzo with all its villages, and they settled here. For the Lord humbled Judah because of Ahaz the king of Israel, for he had made Judah act sinfully and had been very unfaithful to the Lord. Here's the reason why God is doing what he's doing. He gave the reason, not just kind of raging against them, but this is why I'm doing this, so that you learn the lesson, so that you come to me. So Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, came against him and afflicted him instead of strengthened him. This is, of course, God is doing it in the background. For Ahaz took a portion from the house of the Lord and the house of the king and of the princes, and gave tribute to the kings of Assyria, but it did not help him. In the time of his distress, he became yet more faithless to the Lord. Even with this hardship, and we thought, and we at least hoped that he would actually learn the lesson because of this hardship, but instead of actually coming to the Lord, what did he do? He actually go farther out. This same king Ahaz, for he sacrificed to the gods of Damascus that had defeated him, and said, because the God of the kings of Syria helped them, I will sacrifice to them that they may help me. But they were the ruin of him and of all Israel. And Ahaz gathered together and vessels of the house of God, and cut in pieces the vessel of the house of God, and he shut up the doors of the house of the Lord. And he made himself altar in every corner of Jerusalem. In every city of Judah he made high place to make offering to other gods, provoking to anger the Lord, the God of his father. Now the rest of his acts and all his ways, from first to last, behold, they are written in the books of the kings of Judah and Israel. And Ahaz slept with his father, and they buried him in the city in Jerusalem, for they did not bring him into the tombs of the kings of Israel. And Hezekiah, his king, reigned in his place. Now, we've seen a lot more detail than what we just read in the second king. So there's more story to it. But when you actually sum it up, literally telling us that he was totally abandoned the Lord and tried to worship other gods. But look at the reason why he went after Syrian God. We're going to read one more time. We're going to read from verse 23 again. For he sacrificed to the gods of Damascus that had defeated him, and said, because the gods of the king of Assyria helped them, I will sacrifice him that they may help me. So what is the reason that he actually went to Damascus to worship the god of Assyria? What is the real reason? From his perspective, he doesn't really care about God. What does he care is about him and his country, right? What God? I don't really care, this God or that God, or I don't really care which God it is. Any God who has most of power, most privilege or authority has, that it can bless me and help me, is who I'm going to go after. I don't really care when, number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, I don't really care which God it is. I'm just going to go after. The reason he went to the Damascus to worship their king, their God, is because, you know what? Syria king must be, the God of Assyria must be very strong. And our God, the God of Israel, it is so weak. So the God of Assyria literally, win this, the God that we believe. Their God is more powerful than my God. So I'm going to abandon my God. I'm going to go after the Syrian God. And if I worship that God, as much as that God helped Assyria, that God must help me too, because I'm worshiping him. So, what is the real reason that is looking for God? Is that because he wants to adore and he wants to worship and he wants to really trust the Lord? Or his really intention is, I don't really care which God it is, as long as anything that helps me, then I don't care, this God or that God. Maybe today I go to God number 1, I'm going to go and worship you, and then you know what, I don't think you're stronger than number 2, or you know what, I'm just going to dump this one and I'm just going to go to number 2. You know what, number 3 seemed to be much stronger, I'm just going to dump you and I'm just going to number 3. Why is he doing this? He doesn't really care about God. There's no fear of God. All he cares is, which God can bless me? Which God can help me? Is all he cares about. This is one of the reasons many of the believers, regardless of Christians or what religion it is, many of their religions and many of the people who believe in whoever the God they believe, they go after God because God can provide us something, or they believe that God can help them something, is why they go after. Many of them, even in church, and Christians, do the same thing. They ask for, what can you give it to me? Because I need this, I'm going to come to you, I'm going to pray to you. You better give me what I'm asking you. It's not a prayer. It is more a threat. If you don't give me, I'm going to leave you. I'm not going to trust you. I'm not going to just do anything for you. I'm just going to leave. You either give me what I want or I'm going to leave. We have to really look inside of us. What do I really want from the Lord? What am I asking? We have to look at our prayer. What am I normally praying for? When we listen to our prayer, if you just record your own prayer for maybe just 4 or 5 prayers, you will hear what you're praying. Not all, of course. Many of the people, their prayer is about what they want, rather than what God wants. There are not many mature Christians who ask the Lord, Lord, what can I do for you? Although there's nothing I can offer you. I know I'm not worthy to give anything. It means anything to you, Lord. But use me for your glory. Use me to expand your kingdom. Use me to do your will. Not just a saying. Not just a saying. But what's really in our heart? Is that what we're really praying for? Or are we normally praying for something that I want something? God, give me this and give me that. Give me wish, give me blessing, heal me, help me. We have to listen to our own prayer. Where am I? Am I the person who really seeking the Lord for my own benefit? Or am I seeking the Lord because He is God? That I am supposed to give honors, praise, and glory to Him. As we look at Ahaz, we have to look inside of us and say, do I have Ahaz in my heart? Am I really worshiping Lord? Am I really trusting the Lord because I need Him for something? Of course we need God all the time. Don't get me wrong. We need God's help. Right? That's how we can live. And God wants us to come to Him and say, Lord, I need you. Of course, we have to. But there's a difference between we realize we're so weak and we're nobody and I'm not capable, I'm not able to do anything, so that I'm coming to you, Lord, and Lord, I'm asking for help so that I can do and that I can follow your will. That's one thing. The other thing is, I don't really care about you, but Lord, you give me what I want. Look at ourselves. And then we have to just to think, Lord, help me to grow my faith. Help me to adore you. Help me to truly worship you. And tell me to truly just follow your way. Rather than always just seeking for my own benefit for what I need. And when you become grudge, when you actually become very selfish, then most of your prayer is always going to be, give me, give me, give me. That's what your prayer is going to be. So just look at ourselves. See what we need to really need to do. So as you can see here, you can clearly see the difference between the king of Israel and king of Judah. Of course, there are kings like Ahaz, right? There's a really bad king who followed exactly what the kings of north have done. He was bad king, Ahaz. But you know what? Jotham was okay. He was not truly faithful to the Lord, but at least he was okay. He was reasonable and he was trying to follow the Lord, although he didn't fully follow the God's way, right? Ahaz, out of blue, he became the worst king, and he was he totally abandoned the Lord, and he just literally, looked at the altar from the Damascus, and then he sent the blueprint to his priest, and he said, this is the altar that you need to build. So what he did was build the way I actually show you to build. So he copied exactly what he saw from the Damascus, sent it over to his priest, and had the priest exactly design and make that altar. And after he made an altar, what he did was he cleared all the articles of the temple, put that away. You don't need it anymore. Just replace it with the new design altar, put it there. What did he do? He gave the burnt offerings. He was giving the grain offerings. He was actually giving the drink offerings. He was giving all kinds of offering to them. Right? But why was he giving that offering? Because the God of Damascus could help me. And now we're going to put ourselves in God's shoes. How would God feel? If you put yourself in God's shoes, how would God feel the situation? We won't be able to look at us from God's perspective as God looks at us, of course, because we're not perfect. However, we need to continue to practice ourselves and continue to try to put ourselves in God's shoes and looking down on us. And why God is doing what he's doing. And if you look at it from that perspective, you would understand a lot more. If you don't understand God's heart, you will never going to understand the Bible and why he's doing what he's doing. All we are going to see is he's killing people, he's striking people, he's always mad, he's just, destructions after another destructions, and he's destroying people is all you're going to see. So what you're going to find at the end is mad God. It's mad God. That's all you will find. But if you look at it from his perspective, there is a very different view. Very different view. So, as we look at this story, although some of the king have failed in Judah, but of course we're not going to look at it today, but the next king after Ahaz is Hezekiah. Probably you heard of Hezekiah. Hezekiah is probably one of the very famous king in Judah, of course. So you may not know everything, but you at least have heard of his name. But he was a good king, right? So think about it. As Hezekiah was growing up under Ahaz, his father, what do you think he has seen and learned? Right? What Hezekiah seen and learned from his father is definitely not following the Lord. He did not learn from his father, because throughout the entire life of Ahaz, he was a wicked king and he totally abandoned the Lord and he didn't do anything for the Lord. So now the question is, how did Hezekiah learn how to serve the Lord? Who taught him? If not father, who taught him? Obviously it was not Ahaz. Of course, the Bible doesn't really describe who. Whether it was, it was a mother, it was his teachers. We don't know who it is. But one thing we do know is he did not learn from his father, for sure. But once again, out of the bad kings, there's a good king coming out. And out of the good king, there's a bad king coming out. Just like Ahaz. Jotham was not a really bad king. Although he did not faithfully follow the Lord, at least he was a reasonably okay king. He was not really totally abandoned God. But once again, their father's fate or their parents' fate is not always inherited down to their descendants or their children's. It's very unfortunate. I wish I can do that I can give my fate to my children's, but unfortunately that's not how it works. They have to choose. They have to choose to believe in Jesus Christ and be saved by themselves. Although we as a parent do everything what we can, but just forcing them, it is not going to help them. So today, I was really hoping that I can actually get to Micah, but it's getting to a Micah is not going to really help for like 15 minutes. So I'm gonna just push it out to next week, and we're gonna cover Micah next week. But up to this point, chapter 15 and 16 of 2 Kings, do you have any question?